Welcome to the Tradie Wife Life podcast, brought to you by Tradies in Business, where we talk to tradie wives about their goals, their challenges, their hopes and dreams, and how their trade business can help with that. Welcome back to Tradie Wife Life. Hello, Warwick Bidwell. How are you today?
Good, thanks, Nicole Cox.
How weird is it for you to be introduced or welcomed to a show rather than doing, I don't know, we don't do we welcome guests over at Tradies in Business, but usually you take the lead.
Yeah, and we kind of worked that out because I'm the man.
I feel like, have you ever played Mario Kart? You know, they leave those little banana peels and bombs behind each of the cars. I kind of feel like you just left one of each.
Yes, I had an old school Nintendo. Used to play that quite a bit, actually, with the fam on the television.
Did you?
Back before computer gaming.
We did not. I don't recall having one in my childhood. It wasn't until I moved out with my first boyfriend. I remember buying him one for Christmas. It was a Sega.
Yep.
Remember the old Segas? And I can't remember what we played, but as a family, our children, you know, on Sundays we would play Mario Kart together. I still suck, but Moo Moo Meadows, and anybody that's ever played it will know exactly what I'm talking about, is my favourite track. It's so much fun. And the cows go bonk when you hit them.
All right. I don't actually think I lead out at Tradies in Business because I'm the man, just to clear that up. It's because one of us had to, and you and I kept talking over the top of each other, and we said, well, I'll do that bit and you do the joke.
Also, it was yours before it was ours.
Ooh, that's straying into some interesting territory. So can we just move on to your topic for today on your podcast, Nicole? I'm feeling very exposed here right now.
Oh, that's very funny. Okay, today we're going to talk about how to balance. I don't know if we're going to get to some tips, but I'm sure that we'll find some ways to give you some tips here. How to balance communication around work. I think that's the crux of the idea that we had about this. Should we be bringing work home conversationally? And this has come up for us today because we have this conversation a lot with our clients. In fact, we've just had a momentum session this week, which is our coaching sessions. And we were talking to one of our couple clients about how they can clear up their communication, because some of it's getting a little bit assumptive and a little bit reactive, and it's getting a bit emotional at times. And so we had a bunch of ideas to transform the way they were communicating to help them get from A to B. But it really stems from this idea that we hear consistently. Now, I'm not saying it's like this in every single family, and this podcast and these episodes that we do will be a little stereotypical because we're talking about a male's perspective and a female's perspective in the traditional roles in a traditional sense, but it's not like this for everyone. And what we see frequently is our tradie wives don't want to be talking about work at home during their family life, but they need some essential information. And our fellas have a slightly different view on this one.
Yeah, and I see this happen, and to be honest, I've fallen into this over the years as well, Nick, where work, home, like it's just all stuff.
Mm.
There's no clearly drawn line between them. And in my previous marriage years ago, my ex and I actually had a business together.
Mm.
And so we just talked about everything all the time.
Mm.
You know, we talked about kid stuff when we were at work, and we talked about work stuff when we were at home, and we talked about all of it on the weekend. And it just sort of happened that way. And I probably didn't necessarily see the point of having these clearly demarcated, separate boundaries for it, because it's like, well, I had something I needed to talk about. Why wouldn't I just talk about it when we're at the dinner table and the kid was asleep? It's like, well, when else am I going to do it?
So can I ask you a really personal leading question?
Go.
Do you think that contributed to some of the friction and fracture within that relationship?
Don't be ridiculous, Nicole. You know what I think it contributed to was just a general lack of awareness around how much time and energy was being put into certain areas of our collective life. And work and kid stuff just took all the time. And so there was no time carved out or quarantined for the relationship.
100%.
And there's this problem that if you don't actually proactively make time for something, and I don't mean make up an extra 3 hours in the day, but so I should use a different terminology there. If you don't protect time to invest in the relationship, the marriage, whatever that looks like, then it won't happen. Guarantee it won't happen.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like it takes the intimacy out of the relationship. And I don't mean the physical intimacy. I mean the intimacy that
Hmm.
comes with
Close
the
connection.
blessing of a relationship. If all you're ever talking about is the kids and your business and just general mundane life, you don't have the opportunity for growth and dreams and sharing how you're really feeling and all of that stuff that goes into the intimacy of a relationship. And I think a lot of that can be changed with quarantining, as you say, time for both. So we actively encourage all of our members and all of our listeners on all of the podcasts to quarantine date night time for your relationship. Make some time for that. And I don't think we talk enough about how you can gently formalize some of your communication opportunities within your business so what we typically see is tradies on the tools still most of the time, and if not on the tools is heavily involved in the day-to-day running of the business. Tradie wife is trying to jump in and establish a role within the business, which means naturally she's going to have some questions about the way things have been done. How could they change? There is some discussion points. And there's no time for those answers because one's away and one's typically based in a home office. Again, generalizing, but important for the context of today's podcast. And so then we see tradie comes home at the end of a really long day. Typically, it's witching hour, the kids are crying, everybody's stressed. There's already a lot of stress, tension, friction in the household. And we still need to get the answers to those questions so that we can keep moving as the tradie wife, but the tradie's feeling really exhausted. And the last thing he wants to talk about is work. And we've missed that opportunity for the beautiful connection moment we should have as soon as we get home. And we see this day on day on day. And instead, creating a small space for a formalized conversation with something like an agenda can make a massive difference. And then recently, we've been talking about handover at the end of each day. So I'll take you through these two concepts, or we'll take you through these two concepts.
No,
I
you can
think,
do
no, you've got to do some of the heavy lifting. That's why you're here.
it.
Um, the first idea is the formality of a meeting structure as the business owners, as the two of you working together in the business. We don't do this because we don't know how to. Trade business owners typically aren't taught any kind of meeting structure in the first place. And so the idea of doing it as husband and wife or as partners feels really, really foreign. And yet, if we follow a simple structure with a simple agenda, here are the 10 things we're going to discuss every meeting on every Monday at the same time in the same way, we can move through so much information so quickly. And I'd love to ask you a really pointed question. What kind of differences have we seen, Warwick, in both the business and then personally when we encourage our clients to do this?
Mm. As you were saying that, I'm trying to remember the specific client that we currently work with who put this in place. I think they're a new client, and now I remember who it is, and now I can speak more accurately about it without giving anything away, of course. Husband and wife team working in a trade business, busy kids, all that sort of stuff, everything going on, usual story. And they gave us some feedback early on in their tradiepreneur journey about just having some of this structure actually meant that the way they spoke to each other had shifted. And so they felt like they had a relationship and they had a business.
Mm.
And it wasn't just stuff all in a bucket and mixed up with a paint stirrer. And so for them, that was huge because their stress levels came down. They weren't barking at each other and grating on each other as much. And that then feeds back into the business because then they're able to make clearer decisions and approach things without the aggro or the depression or the anxiety and all the other stuff that is just a modern part of running a business and a marriage and a household. So that's one specific example that stands out for me, and that is so incredibly common. You know, we've got some power couples that are working together in the business, and you know, doing some big stuff in their businesses,
Mm.
stuff and big contracts. There's high pressure, high stakes, a lot of money flying around. And it works really well. They're not at each other's throats all the time because they have that clear discipline, I guess, is the way I would see that, Nick. They have that disciplined approach to, hang on, it's the dinner table.
Mm.
We made an agreement. Is that okay if we keep that?
Mm.
And it's like, oh, yes, okay, because they both see the why behind that change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a massive change, and there's lots of little things you can do to support yourself through that, like carrying a notebook. Some of these things you're just going to roll your eyes at, and yet it makes a big difference to the end result here. Carrying a notebook or having a notes app on your phone where you can just make notes as you think of it instead of immediately bringing that to the conversation, because there's nothing more irritating than them breaking those rules, and very quickly they get fudged unless you are disciplined about it and you stick to the agreement. It makes for clarity also. So when I think about tradie wives, who are the majority of our audience here, we're not coming into a role that has even been carved out mostly for us in a business yet. We're creating a role. We're making a role for ourselves as we grow in our trade business ownership journey. And so we need information and we need some of that formality for us to be able to fulfill our role and to really grow and spread our wings and feel as though we're taking on something that is ours instead of just helping out. And believe it or not, this is one of those keys that can really make a significant impact to you being able to stamp your authority on your role and take ownership for it. So lots of ways in which you can do this. I think having an agenda is absolutely key, and then a dedicated time that you do this every week, at least once a week. And then the second part of this that we're finding is having a huge successful outcome for our business owners is rather than that day-to-day conversation that we have, have you done this, have you done that, so on and so forth, it goes on all day long, is restricting it to a handover meeting. Now, we call it handover because we work with lots of couples where the wife in the partnership has worked in some sort of health service, and generally they do handovers at the start and the end of each shift. And so it's a natural way to explain giving the information that's required. So if we know, for example, let's say the tradie needs to make a phone call to a client to let the client know we're not going to be able to start on the day we thought, we're going to have to push it back a couple of days because something has happened. Now, as the wife, I'm probably stressed and thinking, oh my God, did that get done? Did it not get done? Or I've received a cranky email because nobody's told them, or something else has happened. So there's no clear communication about whether that's happened or not. With the opportunity for a brief handover, they only need to take 5 to 10 minutes. We can look through our list of individual obligations for the day and know that, yep, all of that was done. So if I do get that email in my inbox, I know actually you were called, you know that you knew the information. I'm sorry that it's feeling uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. I can fix the problem. But I'm not immediately thinking, oh, he hasn't done it. And creating stress in a relationship that doesn't actually need to be there. Or we get to the end of the day and we do our handover and we realize, nope, some of those calls haven't been made. Great. Let's make sure that they can happen tomorrow.
Mm,
It's almost supporting one another in our roles and the way that we're doing it. And it doesn't take long, and it just prevents then that slipping into those dinner time conversations.
mm. Yeah, it feels, well, I think for a lot of people it feels silly. It
Mm.
feels forced. It feels um foreign, I guess, because we're not used to doing it that way. And I think about a lot of our guys, and I'm not a typical guy. I don't work on site. I sit in an office all day. I have relatively soft hands. Uh, and we still approach life in little compartments as men.
Mm.
And this is not me saying it. It's been written about by many, many people over, well, yeah, over on Tradies in Business. We had Maggie Dent speak over there on our podcast, Nicole,
Yep.
that we share equally,
Now.
about just the differences between the male female approach. And so I think guys actually have that capacity and ability to live their life and have conversations in little boxes. And even though they're stressed out and burned out and overwhelmed a lot of the time, I can talk to my wife at the dinner table for 4 minutes about something that I need done in the business, and then I can move on from that
Yeah.
almost instantly.
Yep.
But for the ladies, that's a lot harder. And so all that stuff is all very fluid and it stays in your mind. And then you just carry all that around. And then there's the emotional stuff that gets
Mm.
often attached to that, of because I'm tired and burned out as the husband, probably I'm a bit sloppy with my language and my tone, and I'm a bit gruff. and I don't necessarily realize it or do it deliberately. It's just because I'm bloody tired and I'm not being as thoughtful with my language as I probably should be. It definitely should be. So then that creates all that yucky dynamic. Even, and I know for me personally, Nick, with my wife, uh, I bath my son almost every day. We got a 12-month-old, and that's something I'm committed to doing. Sometimes it's sort of the only time I see him during the week. And I remember an incident where my wife was having a shower in the bathroom. I'm bathing my son in the bath, and she's like speaking loudly through the shower to me about business stuff. And I'm trying to bath my son, and I can see him getting a bit overstimulated and antsy, and I'm having to shout back at her so she can hear me. And I actually felt like she was intruding on my space with our boy. And I actually called us to order and I said, "Hey, honey, can we talk about this later or tomorrow? Because, this is our family time. I know we're all in the bathroom together, but can we not do this now?" And I just got this, "Oh, okay, sorry," from the shower. And that was hard to do. That's a hard thing to do, is call us both back to order. And I think both um, partners need to give each other permission to do that. I think that's the biggest piece in this, Nick.
So lots of growing and learning as a couple when we jump into business together. It is not the easiest thing to do, but I encourage you to approach this like you're strangers, not like you're an intimate couple, because that's when you can start to add a little formality. And it doesn't need to be rigid, just a little bit of formality that can help stop the blurring of lines so that you
Mm.
manage to do this in a way that means that you're both successful in your careers and successful in your relationship. If you have listened to this today and think, oh my goodness, we need some help, look, we don't offer marriage counseling, but we do offer a stellar business program for trade business owners. If you'd like to find out more, you can head over to Facebook, find us there, Tradies in Business or Tradie Wife Life, or you can pop on over to the website, tradiesinbusiness.com.au. Warwick, thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure, Nick.
Thanks for listening.
All right.